Redditors whose job requires them to go into other people's homes for a living. What's the most bizarre thing you've seen or found? Part 3. This one guy's walls were covered, and I mean covered, with old Fillmore concert posters from the 60s. I am a property manager and I get to see quite a bit of bizarre things in people's homes. Most notably was a home in which the tenants had brought cockroaches in when they moved. They attempted to treat by themselves, which was akin of raid, and to tape every single kitchen cabinet shut with duct tape. That didn't work and attributed to the home becoming infested. By the time we had discovered this, it was a full-blown infestation with hundreds all over the walls, behind light switches, and in light fixtures. I walked into the home one day to speak with the mom about pest treatment, and I peered down the hallway, noticing the daughter laying under newspaper on the floor. When the door closed, she woke up, sat up, and you could see the cockroaches crawling on her and falling from her hair onto the newspaper. The daughter must have been in her 20s, but when I asked how they lived that way, she simply said they are like friends to her. Fire/EMS, weird houses are normal to me now. One of my favorites, and most wholesome, is a farm home with a young man figuring out his diabetes. So sometimes he crashes, hard. The first time we ran on him. We run up to the house, and a furious gallop follows. My partner beats me inside. And as I open the door, a teeny tiny pygmy goat rounds the corner and rears up at me. I go inside and this goat just welcomes itself inside and saunters upstairs to the young man's room. Dad sees the goat and my concern about the ghost being a problem, and he just flatly says, "Oh no, there's a goat in the house," as if this goat doesn't invite itself inside every day. So goat helps me bring this kid back from a hypoglycemic emergency, and then I was promptly attacked by a lady turkey. The family tried to give me the goat as a token of appreciation. If we didn't have strict rules against gratuities, I totally would have taken that goat. A close second would be this one house that's completely lined with Budweiser beer cans. The entire interior is empty, bud. Less wholesome. A house full of bones and hair, literally piles of bones and hair. Hoarder houses covered in shit. A creature living under the stairs. And so much more. Oh, but the best one, we were paged to a man who got oven cleaner in his eyes and couldn't see. When we arrived, the house was empty. But a struggle was clearly evident. We had to ensure he wasn't dying in a corner somewhere. So we scoured the house. Upstairs were literally hundreds of butt plugs, a few hundred feet of bondage rope, and Magic the Gathering cards. All pristinely organized on a leather tarp, but no patient. It was immaculate. We went back downstairs and suddenly realized there were butt plugs everywhere. Just randomly placed amongst normal house things. Everywhere as well. Turns out the patient got a ride from the neighbor. Life-size child dolls. So many dolls. I built furniture pre-pandemic. Going house to house. I thought shit like this was just a myth. Or the kind of stuff you see on TV. Maybe read only in a Reddit post. No. I got to this lady's house to build an incredibly basic and small table. I'm talking 4 legs. 2 nuts tightened on per leg. And done. If you've ever changed a light bulb, you could build this table, so I'm not sure why she hired me. And her husband was downstairs. But anyway, in her living room alone there were like 12 dolls. Some sitting at a table. Some on a couch. Some on their own couch. One on a rocking horse. One at the kitchen table. More in a display case. More in front of the display case. It was really weird. Easily 30 dolls were visible just from a public view of the house / where guests would stand. Then she sits and silently watches me build the table. Not in a "I think you're going to do it wrong" way. Just a watching you way. I've never been so glad to have such a short install in my life. I noped out so hard before I became a doll. My husband's grandfather owned several rental properties. When my husband was acting as his property manager, he found this very ornate wizard staff with a little crystal ball on top. As the property in the unit was considered abandoned, his grandfather let him keep it. In my previous job, I visited elderly people's homes to help care for them. A man had a photograph of his dead mother in her coffin framed, one next to his bed, and another massive photograph framed in the lounge room. He proceeded to explain in detail about how she was so beautiful in death and in her coffin, while admiring the photograph. This was the first time I had met this person too. Not really your everyday small talk like you would expect. As an 18-year-old still pretty new to the workforce at that point. It definitely creeped me out. Years later I can still remember the photograph like it was yesterday. Did not help that the guy also gave off creepy vibes. He liked to try and hug the female carers to get near them. I clean houses. One guy has his snap-on toolbox in his closet, and instead of naked women on the wall like I'm used to, stepdad is a mechanic. He has posters of a young Queen Elizabeth II. A drawer full of cash, maybe PS 20k in loose notes. A room full of dolls. The usual: no furniture. No carpets. Massive TV. The models of a professional Lego builder. A cannabis farm. A panic room. A very rare Morgan sports car in the lounge. A porn shoot. A passport and ID for a high-ranking US military officer, and a pile of cocaine. Murder victims. Suicide victims. Suicide notes but no body. Evidence of crimes, and a house full of chocolate, like floor-to-ceiling packs of chocolate. The life of a paramedic is rarely dull. I'm an interior designer and I work for some pretty wealthy people. One client was an unemployed drug abuser living off his billionaire parents with his sane, mad, unhappy wife. I came in to take some measurements one morning. He's sitting on the floor of his study, wearing just underwear, with his watch collection all over the floor around him. There were Patek Philippes, Rolexes, Jaegers, Piaget, every big name you could think of, in large quantities. Must have been over $3 million in watches on that floor. And he was wearing just underwear every time I went there. Cat sitter here. This one place owned by a single man had a 3-foot dildo in the drawer that I had been told the cat food would be in. While looking for his cat to give him medicine, there was a collection of dildos, vibrators, and pocket pussies in the bedroom. I do my best not to snoop because there are many other stories of strange/embarrassing things I have found. But when a cat that needs medicine hides, sometimes it is inevitable. I used to work as a delivery driver in northern Illinois, and although I didn't always enter homes, there were many times during the winter when I was asked to step in real quick while they looked for the coupon they used or something. I remember one time I came into this guy's home and the whole place reeked of weed. He's wearing a robe and has an unlit cigarette hanging from his mouth as he's looking through drawers trying to find the coupon. I take a quick look around and I see the source of the smell, a giant sack of weed on the counter and a digital scale next to it. Dude was clearly a dealer. But that wasn't what was weird. What was weird was that there was a used condom on the scale. I didn't see anyone else around. And the order didn't seem like for more than one person. So it basically looked like this guy was trying to weigh how much he was able to come. I've done some pretty weird shit when stoned as well. So I chalked it up to that. I did kinda wish he tipped me in weed instead of cash. But then again, maybe I didn't want anything that possibly was on that scale at some point. I was a mover for 10 plus years, but the most interesting was a bed we flipped up. The woman the bed belonged to had the forethought to move her stash of self-care supplies but didn't take into account it was a memory foam mattress, so there in the bottom of the mattress was an imprint of a huge double-sided self-care dildo. A woman I used to clean for would stick her chewed Nicorette gum all over her bedside table. It looked like it was covered in mosaic tile or seashells. It was Nicorette. Wasn't sure if I was supposed to clean it or not. So didn't. 160-foot long structure that was somehow stitched together double wides end to end. Like 4 or 5 of them. And the insides were basically long hallways with around 30 bedrooms. The middle was a big living room and kitchen. The bedrooms had padlocks on the outside. I called CPS, foster home, and refused to complete the work on that house. Still creeps me out 10 years later. Drugs. On the table. When they are on probation. For drugs charges. On a visit they knew was happening. As a housekeeper. I've seen. Used tampons and chewed up food in the nightstand. A bed in the library with tripods around it. We were asked to leave it alone. And I never saw that bed before or after that initial encounter. I found a voodoo doll in my employer's daughter's room. A legit voodoo doll made from straw with someone's hair in it on her bed amongst her fugglers and little apple dolls. My partner is a plumber. He says he's never seen anything crazy or as unbelievable as others on here have. But he cannot express how disgusting some people's houses are. No airflow. Can't imagine the last time the house has been cleaned. Mess and junk everywhere. The house itself stinks. Piles of rubbish in the corner of the kitchen. And it's quite interesting because a lot of these houses that he goes to are people complaining about water leaks. But it's not actually a leak. It's because they never wipe down the water that had, for example, splashed out of the sink and onto the kitchen benches, therefore the water sits there and the bench itself rots away, allowing water that had splashed out of the sink to drip down into the cupboard under the sink, looking like a leaking pipe or tap. So gross. Okay, so I resell furniture, I refurbish and stuff, and I was delivering an old tea table to this older gentleman's home. He just had a whole wall fucking dedicated to Garfield the cat. An entire wall. Back in 1989 there was a steam pipe explosion in Gramercy Park, NYC. That's the one where a young mother was cooked to death in her own bedroom. I was part of the operation that cleaned it up, which is a story in itself. The residents had to be evacuated. Firemen stole pretty much everything they could. It's why I totally believe the story about the 9/11 fire truck full of stolen jeans. The ugly truth is firemen often steal shit, justifying their risking their lives as the excuse. We had unmonitored and unrestricted access to every apartment in the building most affected. I did background testing for asbestos, so I had hours to kill. I remember the Grammy-winning musician with gold records on the wall who was big into Southwest chic. Everything was Navajo prints and raw wood furniture. His entertainment center had wire mesh. Another resident who was big into drugs was also OCD. So everything was organized and labeled. But the freakiest was an elementary teacher who was into BDSM. So there was Polaroids of her in restraints and a dog cage. The pictures went back at least 20 years. Thanks for watching.